The human brain starts working the moment you're born, but never stops until you fall in love or come up to speak on stage. 10 years ago, I came up to a stage very similar to this one. I was walking up, I was freaking out so much. I looked at the audience, and I actually bowed in the other direction, in the corner, because I was freaking out so much. But I eventually got up. There was a grand piano in front of me. I was gonna play a sonata. I got down, sat on the piano, started playing the intro. I was really enjoying my piece, until I forgot the next chord. Suddenly, my hands started sweating. I had clammy hands. I started perspiring. And for the first time, I didn't know what to do. So I stopped. I stared at my teacher standing behind me. She had a blank stare on her face. So I decided to get up, walk through the audience, and leave the venue. At the age of 16, I met with a very interesting pianist, actually a piano teacher. She also happened to be on her side job, was being an experimental neuropsychologist at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Now, we had a very interesting conversation, and I came to talk to her about this problem, performing anxiety, because I didn't know exactly what to do about it, how to cure this problem. So we talked about a concept called neurodidactics. Basically, this concept was mixing neuroscience with the art of teaching, which is the future. Now, music is not tangible. We can't eat it, we can't play with it, we can't mate with it. It doesn't protect us from natural disasters, and it doesn't vanquish predators. However, it's very prized. We actually love music. So why does the mere sequence of beats, sounds, and rhythms actually hold such, why do we value this so much? The answer to this lies in the neuropsychology of music. Moving on, how many of you in the audience have heard of music actually affecting the right portion of the brain? There we go. So there has been research that proves that music actually affects the creative mind and eventually gets you to be a better logical thinker. So now, there's been a lot of research conducted concerning the effects of music on the brain. However, not that much research concerning how to use neuroscience to reform the performing arts and instruction in general. So reforming teaching. So now here we have music in the corner. Those are some sound waves, not French fries. And here we have a frontal cortex and an auditory cortex, which are two main things I'll be referring in my speech. So the frontal cortex actually works to provide satisfaction after we're done playing a piece. It makes us very happy. The auditory cortex actually recognizes many beats and values and converts them so that our brain can process them. So basically, when we play a very challenging piece, we get very anxious, and we get very bored easily. This is why you see very prominent performing artists play in the zone when be in the zone when they're actually playing a piece. They're not thinking about what they're playing, but they're simply going through with it. That's why they don't get anxious. And this is something we wanted to actually reform with the experiment that we were trying out. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the human fight-or-flight response. How many of you have heard of this response in psychology? Awesome. Okay, so what we have is we have threat perception. When I came up to that piano, I realized that there was a huge audience, and that if I messed up, people would probably laugh at me. I could probably never come up and play piano again. So now we have three portions of the brain that actually are involved with this response. We have the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenals. And basically what these do are they send hormones to our brain telling us to run while we're actually playing a piece. That's what I ended up doing. So these three parts of the brain lead to stress. Now, stress is obviously detrimental to the body. Stress leads to different thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes, perceptions, behaviors, and problems with their relationships, leading to even more stress. And this increased stress, this prolonged stress, can actually affect the way we think and perceive the future. Now, moving on, this is actually an experiment that we conducted. So it's not really creepy because we got the parents to sign waivers, so not that big of a deal. Basically, this girl was playing a piece in front of her peers, and she messed up in the middle and suddenly put her hand over her mouth because she realized that she's done something wrong. This is called an evaluative response. And we realize that if we can reduce the effect of this evaluative response through biofeedback, we could actually have kids have less performance anxiety as in general. So now I'm going to talk about the cycle of performance anxiety and what it actually is, why it's so traumatic to human beings. First of all, we have fear and apprehension about performance. Probably the 2 months leading up to a recital, we start freaking out, saying, oh my God, I'm practicing so much. I don't know what to do. It's coming up in another 3 weeks. I don't know what to do. Then we have psychophysiological arousal, which is basically clammy hands and increased body temperature, all of these things that happen in our body. That leads to reduced dexterity, which means that when we actually come up to play the piano or play the particular instrument, we can't play it as well anymore. That leads to negative interpretations of performance. So when we leave that recital, when we leave that performance, we realize that we did very poorly, and we don't want to actually play again. That leads to threat. And once again, threat leads to fear and apprehension about performance. So what we want to do with this research is actually cut that cycle. Now, this is an accurate learning curve. So what this describes is how learning actually occurs. Learning is never a straight line. You know, we have those bad days where we don't understand anything that's going on. We just want to sleep, get some Starbucks in the morning, chill. But this is actually how learning occurs. We have very bad days, and then one day we reach mastery after numerous trials. Now, we came up with this performance pyramid after researching. So we came up with multiple group lessons so that these kids get accustomed to each other. We want to reduce competition, and I'm sure that you guys have heard of piano exams, instrumental auditions annually. That's something that kids do for college apps, I'm sure you've heard. So we want to reduce that competition and allow students to actually enjoy the performing arts, enjoy their instruments that they're taking part in. So multiple group lessons will soon lead to rehearsal. And as soon as these kids actually get to rehearse in the place that they're going to perform at, they suddenly get accustomed to the venue. One fear is gone right there. And then we finally have the recital. The recital is obviously high threat because it's in front of many people and it's a very interesting experience. But you're going to be less anxious at the recital if you get to play at the venue and if you don't have that sense of competition with other people. Here are a couple of pictures. The top image is some adorable kids. They are basically learning from each other, being friends. And right here, we have a group lesson going on. And the best part about group lesson is that there's increased amicability between all the students, and there's simply less competition. We want to reduce that competition so that these students don't have any performance stress. So now I'm finally going to get to the more technical part of our experiment. So neurotechnology is a fantastic field that involves MRI imaging, PET scans, and this has so many applications in the real world. This can actually diagnose psychological disorders, this can find tumors, this can actually provide many solutions to everyday problems. However, we're going to be talking about brain imaging and stimulation, and specifically electroencephalography, which is also called EEG. EEG basically looks like this, and these are one of our prettier electrodes. He has a little rainbow wire going on there, but basically the wire is usually going to connect to a computer. There's various electrodes on different sites on the head. We have FP1, we have P3, so those stand for frontal lobe and parietal lobe. And basically what these electrodes do is pick up on signals in the brain and actually convert them to waves on a computer, showing you where the most activation is occurring when you're playing a piece. Finally, these are how EEG findings look. There's your brain, and that's how sequential learning occurs. So sequential learning is when you don't actually know a piece well enough. You can see all of that activation in the frontal region. You see all of those different colors, and that means that your piece is still very rough. You still haven't mastered your piece. So that's how we can tell if we actually hook you up to a computer. That's how we can tell that you haven't mastered your piece yet. Now, the picture on the right is when you're actually fluent with a piece, when you've actually allowed your memory consolidation process to take place. And that means that you see that huge blue region, meaning that your brain has actually had time to absorb the information and that you're truly ready to perform. So now these images, so just simply hooking up a person to a computer while playing the piano can tell us whether or not they're ready to play that piece, whether or not they're going to be anxious while playing, and whether or not they're going to be ready for playing this piece. So I'd like to leave you with one more statement from a psychologist named Albert Bandura. He stated that even the most talented people beset by self-doubts from time to time because no one ever experiences increasing, ever-rising accomplishments. Now, the amazing part that I learned about this experiment was that there was a lot of controversy about it, because everybody wants to stick to the status quo. Nobody wants to change music lessons because they've been the same for the past couple of decades. Weekly lessons, and you go to the lesson. Your teacher gives you some homework. You have to attend a recital after a while or perform in an orchestra. That's very typical. However, what we want to do is use applied scientific research to truly reform this and reduce anxiety in the performing arts. So what I'd like to leave you with is you can combine any two passions and truly make a difference with it. So go against the grain and change your lives today. Thank you.